What's up, podcast friends? I'm happy to share that we've teamed up with Dormco to make your dorm decorating a lot easier. Why Dormco? They offer quality and durability, affordability, and a wide selection for bedding to storage solutions and everything in between for your dorm room. So if you or anyone you know is looking to decorate your dorm, see the affiliate partnership link in the show notes for Dormco, your one stop for stylish, affordable, and quality dorm essentials. Please note that if you make a purchase through any of our affiliate links, the podcast gets a commission. But rest assured that we would only promote products that we believe in and feel would benefit our listeners. Thank you all and best wishes. Welcome to the CAP, the College Admissions Process Podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you today Carly Brockett, who's the Senior Associate Director at UCLA. Now, I had the great honor of meeting Carly a while back at the National Association for College Admissions Counselors at their national conference down in Baltimore. We met. I guess we hit it off, and here we are, Carly. Thank you so much for being here today. It's an honor and a pleasure. How are you?
I'm great. Happy to take this break. I'm in the midst of reading training, so it is a welcome addition to have this opportunity to connect, to talk about college. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, we're so happy to have you, Carly. I really appreciate it. And let's just start by asking you, Carly, to give us a brief description about yourself. How long have you been in admissions, and how did you end up in such a position?
Yeah, so this summer marked my 20th year. So I've been
Wow.
working in higher ed for 20 years in different types of roles at different types of institutions. I am originally from New Mexico. I am one of those brave students who decided to go out of state, and I went to a small private school in Indiana and kind of just fell into being an admission counselor. I was looking for a job. I had graduated. I still wanted to stay near my alma mater, and it was a perfect transition for me. It was, and it gave me time to think about it. Like, is this a career? Is this a stopping point? But I realized it's important to be close to home for me, so I transitioned from my alma mater, which is DePaul University in Greencastle, Indiana,
Awesome.
and I left after a year to be a recruiter admission counselor at Trinity University in San Antonio, Texas. And I think that's really where the bug got me, where higher ed matters, recruitment matters. I love talking with families, and I spent 5 amazing years there. And I had the opportunity to do recruitment not just in Texas, but in Central South America, Mexico, and the people and stories you meet along the way and then seeing them come to campus was fantastic. Along that way, I outgrew the position I was in, and I had a great mentor who told me, it's time to go. You can grow, but you need to grow at your next place. And that's where I moved to California, and I started as an associate director at the California Institute of Technology. Caltech is very focused in STEM, a lot of crossover with
Sure.
MIT.
Absolutely.
So those types of students were fascinating. And I had the pleasure of recruiting in New York, Connecticut, Florida, and
Wow.
really being able to understand where students were looking to thrive and find their community, right? And that was just the perfect opportunity. And I was there for 5 years again, loving it. And then I decided to do a crazy thing that sometimes happens. I jumped to the other side of the desk and I tried out the co director of college counseling in an all girls school here in Los Angeles. And my hat's off to all counselors. That work is hard.
Absolutely.
It is just the hours you put in, the dedication and time. It just really gave me a true appreciation to the craft. And, I went in thinking that was going to be it, but I had a unique opportunity to join the College Board after my second year in the higher ed sector, and my role was to connect with institutions on the Western Coast. So I worked with UCs, I worked with University of Washington, and worked with their enrollment offices and talking about trends, changes, connecting with students. And it came to a place where I realized I needed to get back on a campus. And that is what led me to UCLA. And I had known the leadership at UCLA, which are phenomenal. And I knew the next place I wanted to go was for meaningful purpose, for mission. And that sums up what University of California is, and specifically UCLA. So I've been there since April 2021, started fully remote
Wow.
at
Well, we
that
remember
crazy
those
time.
years.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
And I've been in my role now for a little over 2 years, and it is something that I am so appreciative of because I have to share being only at private schools, understanding what it's like at a public institution has been such a tremendous growth. And I think I just navigated to this work. I come from a family of educators. My mom's a retired first grade bilingual teacher. My sister is a special ed
Awesome.
teacher.
Awesome.
She always told me, don't go into education. The pay's not there. But you do good work, and that's what I love. I love being able to align my professional and personal life together in value.
Well, that's awesome. And you said you came back to home, which is on campus. And obviously,
Yes,
UCLA is so fortunate to have you, as are we, here on this podcast. And I loved how you talked about the fact that recruitment matters. And it certainly does, because obviously, you're looking to create that community, which we know as UCLA, go Bruins. And by the way, I had the great honor this past summer to actually be in California. And absolutely, I took the ride. I saw the campus. Not only did I love the campus, but the surrounding area. You could just tell that it's thriving. There truly is something for everyone. Your retention rate is so high. The academics, what students are offered inside your classrooms, outside of your classrooms, on your campus and beyond. UCLA is truly just one of those gems that so many people want to hear about. So, Carly,
thanks.
can you provide us with an overview of what makes UCLA unique within the University of California, of course, the UC system, in terms of academic programs, campus culture, and anything else you wish to share with us?
Absolutely. UCLA is a real gem. And I think oftentimes when people hear it's in the city of Los Angeles, they're like, no, it's not in the city, right? And I think they're always surprised to get on campus to see the red brick that is most common a lot in the East Coast on college campuses, to see the hill where you can be able to overlook not only the academic buildings, but up to the hill where the students actually live. And, we, I think, have really had a lot of pride in the work we've done and the families we've reached and the community we've developed and created. UCLA has been ranked again number one applied to university. We're among the top 10 of public universities giving back to public good, which is really big. I think that is shows the importance of our community and that dedication to making the world better. We offer over 125 majors and 90 minors. That's a
Wow.
lot to explore. In fact, our newest major is on disability studies. We're
Oh,
the first of
cool.
its kind in California for a public institution.
Wow.
We also have the city where we have, for Los Angeles, one of the rich and most diverse. It is very much a world hub. Our students, there's 30,000 strong in our undergraduate population. They're innovators, they're collaborators, they're driven. We have dedicated research hubs to foster research among all fields of study. We offer small cluster programs that are seminar style and team taught. You're sitting across a table with the students you're studying with alongside. You're having conversations with renowned faculty. We definitely take advantage of the city that we're in. We have volunteer days. We are aware of how culturally rich the city itself is. We are, as of the recording, the only UC that guarantees housing for 4 years for freshmen and 2 years for transfers, which is huge. And we have a lot of pride in that, a lot of dedication. We were able to make that announcement a couple years ago, and we are really proud that we can offer that to our students to have that real college experience. We are also have such a strong alumni network, a storied athletic history, Bruin pride that just you can feel it when you're on campus. And finally, there's a public service and civic engagement that runs through our campus, and you can see it through giving back, volunteering, and contributing to the positive change in our world.
Well, that's fantastic. And I appreciate the fact that you talked about housing, which is a very good question for students and their parents to ask. Not so much only what does freshman housing look like, but do you guarantee housing on campus for 4 years or not? So it's a really good question. And I'm so glad that you brought that up. You're number one in applied to universities. And the last statistic that I read, you had about 150,000 applications, somewhere in that range. Is that correct, Carly?
Yeah, and so we are quickly looking and starting to think about what the volume looks like for this upcoming year.
Unbelievable. And like you said, 125 majors, 90 minors, so much to offer your students again inside your classrooms and beyond. So, what would you say, Carly, are the key components of UCLA's application review process, including what you look for when building an incoming freshman class?
Yeah, it's Many layers. We read the application front to back. It goes through 2 reads from our staff or our external readers, and the admission review reflects the reader's thoughtful consideration of the full spectrum of the applicant's qualifications, right? We all live in different communities. We all learn in different communities. So we really want to look at the evidence provided in the application, the context of the applicant's academic and personal circumstances, the overall strength of the UCLA applicant pool. And this includes in no certain order or one given more merit than the other, but it's the full record of achievement in college preparatory work in their high school. So that means what is offered in their school, not comparing schools. Personal qualities of the application. So, what have they done outside of the classroom? What do those activities look like? What can they help and bring and contribute to our community? And also, what are their likely contributions to our intellectual, cultural, and dynamic campus, right? We want to understand achievement in academic enrichment programs, opportunities, and also challenges that they faced. When we're looking at an application, we know there's not just one right path for every student. We know there's our bumps, U-turns, curveballs. So really, when we're looking at applicants, the components are understanding where and what they've taken advantage of in their academic setting, how they've developed during their 4 years in that learning, where and what they've done outside of those academic walls, and then being able to see and understand their voices through what they want to share that's important for us to know in that application. And again, it's not just one person reviewing, it's multiple. And we really want to capture in essence that review reflects a thoughtful consideration of the full spectrum of the applicant's qualifications.
Well, I'm so glad that you mentioned all of that, particularly the fact that we all live in different communities. So we want to look at the strengths that you, students, provide in your applications. And as Carly mentioned, it's not just the academics. Of course, it's a big part of it, but also what kind of community member are you going to be? So, in other words, what kind of activities did you participate in outside of the classroom so that Carly could determine two things. Number one, by looking at the transcript, can you handle the work once on campus that's in the classroom? But also with everything else that you list outside of the classroom or outside of your transcript, what kind of community member you're going to be to contribute to this beautiful thing that we call UCLA. Now, Carly, we know that the college application process can obviously be overwhelming and stressful, which is why we put episodes like this together to really just pull the curtain back and talk to someone like yourself straight from the admissions office. So, what are some common mistakes applicants make during the application process, and how can they avoid them?
Yeah, so I'm first going to start off with the UC application is different. It is on its own platform. It is unique in how we gather information, and context is everything in that. And the application does not offer the opportunity for other voices to be considered. So we don't hear from teachers, we don't hear from mentors, we don't do interviews, we don't allow for additional portfolio research papers to be uploaded. We don't even ask for transcripts. Everything is self-reported by the student. So if whatever this student wants us to hear or know about, they have to put that in the application. And I think sometimes students think we're going to know or assume that we're going to know when we're not, especially if they're under the understanding that we are only going to hear their voice in that application. So I often tell students talk to your teachers, talk to your mentors, talk to your counselors, ask them what they're writing about you. Ask them what are some things that you should make sure to include when you're filling out the UC application. Because that contextual information is going to help us get to know you because we won't know unless you tell us. And I think that's really important to understand because as you're filling out so many other applications, like the common application, there's opportunities for other voices to be heard about you. But at the UC level, the UC application, it is very much a self advocacy application. So it is the student putting their voice to what their experiences have been like in high school. The other portion that students may not always take full advantage of is that we offer for over 20 activities listed and they're in different groupings and there's up to a 350 word count. So I often tell students, make sure you don't use acronyms, spell everything out. When you're in clubs or you have an award or an honor, make sure you give some information about that. Spell out the roles you played in that club or that activity. Were you the lacrosse captain? If it is an award, was that local to your school district? Was it state? Was it national? Was it international? Really giving the context of what that is, especially if you are thinking that we may know your state awards or honors. You should not assume we know. I even tell California students who are applying, we don't know everything about the state of California. Fill it in, share that with us. And then I think the last tip is understanding what is being asked by the personal insight questions. Again, the UC application is different. The word personal insight questions, notice it does not have the word essay in there. And that's because they are just that. They are to be a response to the question with I statements, give examples, be relevant to their high school experience. Students are the ones applying. We love that they have mentors, supportive teachers, family members, but we want to really learn about them. So really think of those personal insight questions kind of like an interview. What would you say if you're at a job and you're asked, how did you make your community better? Leverage friends, go back and forth and ask those questions. And understand these are short responses, very different from the essays crafted, developed, fine tuned for your other applications. And there's going to be a lot more word count in those versus us. I think we're only at 350 word count. So again, those personal insight questions go quick. So those are the things I would say is understand the UC application is self-advocacy. You have to share and give context to what you want us to know. We won't know otherwise. Leverage the space for words when you're listing out activities and clubs, and really understand the personal insight questions are questions that you're responding to and not essays.
Well, I love that. And you spoke about students, listen to the message, tell them, meaning don't leave it up to the admissions representative to speculate about you. Really tell them and give a comprehensive answer to all of the questions that you are going to provide on your UC application. Now, Carly, you mentioned a lot of things: self reported academic record, PIQ. So let's just unpackage this, if you don't mind, one by one, by starting with what are you looking for when reviewing those self-reported academic records, and does it differ based on a student's intended major?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So I'm going to first start off with some of the technical pieces of how we look at the self-reported. We will actually look at your ninth grade courses, but your GPA will be factored by your 10th grade classes and grades, your 11th grade classes and grades, and then we'll see what you're taking your senior year. So ninth grade grades are not factored into the GPA, and we do weighted and unweighted, and that's 10th and 11th grade grades only. We are looking for accuracy. So when a student says what they're taking and the grades that they're taking, it's going to be what we're going to see once you enroll, if you get to that point at UCLA, and it matches. We also don't take pluses or minuses. Again, a little bit different. So those are the technical pieces that I want to help understand how we differentiate from some of the other places you're applying to, sending your transcript. You won't get to that stage until you decide if you are admitted and you decide to come to and enroll at UCLA. Now let's talk about what we're looking for within those courses that you've reported, the grades. We're wanting to understand within the context of the curriculum available at your high school, how have you taken advantage of those courses? That might differ depending on where your strengths are. So it might be very heavy in science, math, it might be very heavy in English, literature. But whatever that is, we're looking to see how you've progressed from ninth, 10th, 11th, and then how you're challenging yourself in 12th. Now, remember I told you we don't take recommendations. So we can't hear from your counselor that says that teacher's no longer teaching that course or there's a max APs. But there is an additional academic section that is 550 word count that students should elaborate on uniqueness in curriculum at their school. And I've read everything from they no longer offered AP English because that teacher left, to I had a conflict. My passion is in X, Y, and Z, and they were at the same time. So I decided to take this course, or that my school doesn't offer AP IB, but we do have what is called our seminar style. So that really is, again, a great place to help frame the curriculum at the school. Now, we're not pitting students against each other because, again, each student is unique in its own right within their own class. We absorb information differently when we're learning. So we're really trying to understand the pathway that student had and looking at that through the lens of the courses offered at that school. Now, you did ask, does it matter on the student's intended major? It doesn't. For us, we are looking at, again, how they've developed academically. It's not going to impact major they go into. In fact, for a lot of our students, once they get on campus, they start taking what is called major prep courses. So you see that for communications, public school Luskin. So some of those different majors, that's when they're taking them their first, second year, and then they're applying into that major their junior year with those prereq courses. So again, we're trying to look at this as a very even playing field. The one caveat I'll put on there, and this doesn't go into the academic piece, but there are some students that might be applying to one of our specialty schools. Our specialty schools are engineering, arts and architecture, music, nursing, theater, film, and television. So those may have additional components like a portfolio, an audition, but that is a standalone for those very specific program. The vast majority of our students are applying into the college. So there's no other additional part of the application. This really is what we're looking at.
Well, that's great info. And I appreciate how you talked about the fact that if there was something unique in a student's school curriculum, again, students, tell them, let them know about it in that question, which is up to 550 words, as you described. Again, very important to tell them. Don't leave it up to the admissions representatives to speculate about anything. Look at each part of your application and make sure you're putting your best foot forward, making sure that each part builds upon the next. I also appreciate you talking about the fact that, yes, you do look at the ninth grade grades. However, they are not taken into consideration in terms of your GPA. The GPA that you're looking for are courses within 10th grade and 11th grade. And of course, you know the courses in progress in senior year. So, Carly, as a follow up to that, with thousands of high schools throughout the country, do you recalculate the GPA indicated by the student, or do you use your own metrics to help guide you through that portion of the review process?
Yeah, so when students are filling out their courses and identifying what level of rigor, they'll put in honors, and there's a guide to help them as they're doing this. So when we're looking at it, we recalculate GPAs both weighted and unweighted. So if we strip out all the honors, this is what it would look like. If we add in the honors, this is what it would look like. So we can see both. Because a student can have a 4.0, but they may not have any of that rigor that has been offered to them at their school, or vice versa. So again, that's how we look at it. There's some great resources on our UC application website that can help you recalculate your GPA so you know exactly what it is. I think it's a helpful tool, especially since we do it for 10th and 11th versus 9th, 10th, and 11th, which a lot of schools will do and what they use. So I always tell students, go to the UC application website. There's some great tips on there, but I feel like this is the part that it can be really useful in understanding what does your GPA look like when it's being recalculated.
Well, we appreciate that. And I always put the Office of Undergraduate Admissions in the show notes. Carly, if there are any resources that you want to share with the students and their parents, obviously just send them to me. And of course, we'll put them in the show notes. So, packaging everything a little further, of course, we spoke about the PIQs, the personal insight questions. So, Carly, can you explain a little further what they are, how to approach them, and perhaps share an example that stuck with you?
Yeah, happy to. So this is my favorite part of the application. This is what I call this what gives character, spice. It helps understand what are things that are important for the students to share with us. So the personal insight questions, there's 8 of them. You have to select 4. So you don't have to do all 8. In fact, I often tell students, you're already doing plenty of writing applying to college in addition to your own schoolwork. So don't try to answer all 8 and then choose the best 4. Really go with the ones that speak to you. And my guess is out of the 8, there's probably going to be 2 or 3 that are clear winners and one that may not, but you'll figure it out as you go. So go with the ones that tell you in your gut, I got this. I know I can relate to this. And they're hitting on different facets that are important to the UCs, important to us at UCLA. And I think that that's the really important part that I was speaking about earlier is that the personal insight questions are just that. They're personal. Means you should use our guidance for each question just as a suggestion in case you need help. There's important things about expressing who you are, what matters to you, what you want to share with us. And I'll just quickly go through and then which of the key topics they are, and then I'll be able to tell you a little bit about some of the ones that have stuck out to me. So the
That'll be
one,
great.
yeah, the first one is really around leadership. And leadership can mean different things to different people, right? Leadership isn't always being a president of a club.
Right.
Leadership doesn't always mean you're successful. You can have a leadership role and be faced with a lot of curveballs, and it may not be as successful, but you're going to bounce back and learn about it. So, really understanding that. The next one is about the creative side. We all have different ways of thinking, expressing creativity. When I worked at Caltech, I definitely saw that, and it can be expressed through mathematics and building, creating. It can also be expressed through dance and art. Again, these
Right.
are passions that
Right.
students might have. Another one is talking about the greatest talent or skill. And I often tell students, you don't just wake up usually with a perfect talent or great skill. You have to refine it, develop it. I ran a marathon once and that was it. But I didn't wake up one day and say, I'm going to go run it. I trained for
Right.
9 months. and and
Absolutely.
I'm glad I had that experience, but that was all I needed. So talk about that training. Talk about the development, honing your skill, talent. We also ask about taking advantage of a significant educational opportunity or overcoming an educational barrier. We know high school is not easy. We know there's going to be challenges and bumps in the road. How you respond to it, how you take advantage of opportunities for help, that's important. That helps show initiative, helps us understand your journey, and helps us better understand maybe some of those things that might be reflected in your high school academics when you're listing out your courses and grades. Another one is to describe a significant challenge you faced and steps you've had to overcome it. Again, that doesn't have to just be in high school, that could be outside the classroom setting. Maybe it's at home, maybe it's moving multiple times. So, being able to have information about that really does help us. Another one is talk about an academic subject that inspires you. And that I just love, because it's not just about learning in class. You find ways to expand upon that subject outside of class, whether it is your love for math and rebuilding electronics and going home and tearing everything apart and rebuilding at the horror of your parents and finding out it actually works. Sustainability, environment, those type of things that kind of just naturally transition into some of your passions outside of class. Another one is what you've done to make your school or community better. This is a big one. You have to take a step back. Was there a place that you spoke up when no one else did? Was there a time when you were able to help plan a project or an event that you can really say this made a difference? And then the last one is the catch all, and that is out of everything that you've already shared in your application, what do you believe makes you a strong candidate for admissions to the UC, the University of California?
Right.
To me, that's the hardest.
Right.
But again, these are 8 with very different asks, and my guess is someone reading these will have a natural gravitation to 1, 2, 3 of them. Maybe the 4th one will be a little bit of that challenge. And these are 350 words. They're quick, they're fast, and they really help us get to know what's important to you because that's what you're deciding to share about. The last thing I'll want to add in here, and again, this is how we're a little bit different. When you're responding to these, you have to have it in the context of your high school time frame. So something might have happened to you when you were 8. That's okay to share, but really expand upon why you're telling us about it now. So I often say use the 25% of the word count to tell us about 8-year-old, but then the rest of the word count about you now and how that has carried over or impacted, because we're wanting to know about you now. And I think that is something that sometimes can be hard to do.
I absolutely love those examples. This was such a phenomenal answer. And students, play it back again and again and again. Number one, what you just mentioned, the 8-year-old story. Speak for 25% of it about what happened when you were 8 years old, but then 75% of it should be about you now, which I think is terrific. I also want to go back to your example about running a marathon, which is phenomenal. Good for you. It's something that I never did. And quite frankly, I'm never going to
One
do
time only.
it. But but the point being is that we know that there are so many students that do so many spectacular things, and so you use the example of running a marathon, but then you gave the example of not only talking about running the marathon, but talk about the training, what you went through, perhaps your thought process, your trials, your tribulations. That I think adds to the story if you're able to show again your thought process, what you had to overcome, as opposed to just saying, I ran a marathon. I'm the captain of the soccer team. I'm the captain of the debate team. I like to draw art, whatever it is, you know. So I just thought that those were great pieces of advice and great insight into the overall application and how to approach the PIQs. So obviously, with 150 some odd thousand students applying, there's a lot of in-state, out-of-state students, which we talked about. But I was curious, does the application process, Carly, differ for in-state and out-of-state students? And does UCLA have, for example, a cap in terms of the percentage of students that they're able to accept from out of state?
Yes, this is a great question, and an important question because I think it really helps set the stage for applicants who are applying who are not a California resident. So the UC system itself really expanded out of state recruitment and enrollment post 2008. So the recession, being able to build, grow, and allowed for an amazing opportunity to bring in so many students from different lived experiences and communities. Since then, we've been slowly rolling back. And we are now at a place where all UCs are being asked to be at 18% non California residents. UCLA is one of those of the UCs that were given an exemption. And we have now since, within the last couple years, been asked to get there. And it's a fine balance because you have to think about students graduating and students entering. So we are getting closer to that 18%, which means there's less seats, not qualified applicants, less seats that we can offer for out of state. And you'll see that with our sister campuses as well. UC Berkeley's working towards getting to the 18% as well. And I believe it's also UC San Diego's that's there. We're the three that are trying to get there. I do want to also add, though, our other sister campuses, some of them may not be at 18% yet. So that's where the UCs are unique and different, but also the same,
Right,
cut from the same cloth.
right.
Um, but that is, I think, something important to understand. If a UC and you're a non-California resident is on your college list and you're interested, great, fantastic. But do know there are some limitations because it's very much our state is focused on educating our state California residents in a way that allows for our rich resources to be able to be shared and make sure there's opportunities.
Well, I really appreciate that. And thank you so much for sharing. And I asked that question because I want students to understand there's a lot of students out there that want to come to UCLA. Students, control what you can control. Carly gave tremendous insight, a lot of gems in terms of the PIQs and everything else regarding your overall application. But then there are things that are frankly out of your control. If UCLA is only accepting 18%, if that's the number, and you're not admitted because you happen to be an out-of-state student and unfortunately, you didn't make the cut. I know it's a very personal thing. People take this personal, but it's not personal. It's nothing that you did wrong. It's just that sometimes there are institutional guidelines that are out of your control. So again, control what you can, hope for the best, but make sure that you provide a comprehensive application when you submit. Would you agree, Carly?
Yeah, and I would add to that, there isn't a percent at the admit stage that it's only 18% can be from out of state. It is overall enrollment at UCLA, we need to get down to 18%. So that's where I
Understood.
said balance act, right? We got to look at who's graduating and then how and what we can do in bringing in. That's where I look to my executive director, Fiona Reese, the associate vice chancellor, Gary Clark. I love that they're doing that balance, not myself.
Well, that's awesome. I really appreciate it. And digging deeper in the whole UC system, I know that you've adopted a test blind policy for admissions. Carly, could you explain what this means and how it affects the application process and the applicant evaluation?
Yeah, so the UC system, we're looking and exploring about this for quite some time. And it was decided at the statewide level that the UCs would be test free, meaning we will not look at or consider testing in scholarship or admission process. And I tell students that over and over and over again. They don't always believe me, but it's true. I tell them, do not waste word character count to slip in your scores. It's non factored. Um, But
That's
honestly,
actually good
it's
advice. Do people do that? They
yeah.
try to they write
I mean, we're in Los Angeles. Real estate is precious, so don't waste your word count real estate. Um, but in all seriousness, I wasn't here when this wasn't mandated. I joined that spring after, and I was really impressed with the continued balance of what is called the 13 factors. It used to be 14 factors in UC Comprehensive Review. It's now 13 without the testing part of it. And they vary. It is comprehensive, it is multiple parts of it. And all these things we're talking about, academics, personal insight question, activities, all of those play into the review process. So testing was only a very small part of it. What I am also happy to hear anecdotally what we're seeing, and again, it will take some time to do research behind it and everything, was that not only did our application pool grow, but when we got to the admitted pool, they were more diverse and they had stronger academics. So, in some ways, there are barriers, perceived barriers that can happen and prevent someone from thinking that they can apply. So, I know we're in this new space of understanding what this looks like. And until things were told differently, we'll continue with being test free. And again, understanding those UC 13 comprehensive factors. It is not about a test score and a GPA. It's much, much more, which is why we're having this conversation.
Well, it's definitely much, much more. And that's why I asked the question because, to your point, you say it and a lot of people don't believe it. So I'm glad you shared that insight. And it is a lot more than just a test score. And we spoke earlier about the extracurricular activities. And I would imagine that when you're looking at activities that students have taken part in throughout high school, it helps you determine, right? And we said it earlier, the type of community member that they're going to be if, in fact, they're lucky enough to come on your campus. So, Carly, how do you evaluate an applicant's activity sheet? And does that change based on their intended major?
Yeah, so both. Really, activities are what they are. It's what you're doing outside the class. So that could be clubs, volunteering, but it could also be part time jobs.
Right,
It could be you're the main translator in your family, so you're going on doctor visits on the weekend with your family members so that you can help translate to
right.
understand what's going on. You might be the evening caregiver as parents might go to work.
Sure.
So I think it's really important to understand we're looking at all these facets to understand how this student is contributing to their growth, their involvement. There might be limitations because of social economic, because of religion, because of just availability. We understand that. Rural communities might have different challenges than urban communities. You might be sitting on a bus for an hour and a half one way every day. That makes 3 hours round trip going to and from school. So when we say activities, it's not just a laundry list. It is other things that what you're occupying your time with outside of school. And that's why when we're talking about tips, there is space to give context to what you've been doing. Then we even ask if you do have a part time job or working, how are you using that money? Is that something that you're saving for college? Are you giving back to your family? Is it your car payment? In Los Angeles, is it paying for gas?
Yes, it's very
There's things.
expensive. I was there not too long ago.
Yep,
I
yep.
thought New York was bad, Carly.
No, no. But it's really trying to understand pursuits, and you're just like everyone, things can change of what you like. So maybe it's a one-time experience in journalism with your school newspaper because you thought you were going to be that next go-to reporter, and you start it and you realize this is not in my wheelhouse. I'm going to give it a go for a year, and then I'm going to switch and change courses because that is also equally important. Learning what is something that you like can inspire you. Now, as far as how it relates to being able to be a part of your intended course of study, sometimes those align. Sometimes you find
Right,
your passion in an
right.
activity about what you want to study and it aligns with it. And I often say this is where that creating of your own application is really nice to see as a whole and step back is how is everything coming together from reading from the transcript courses then to going into activities, and then you might be expanding in part of some of those activities in your personal insight questions, so there can be that flow there too as well.
Well, I appreciate you talking about that flow and the fact that you mentioned part time jobs or any family responsibilities, which I think is great. And again, very important students to not leave it up to the admissions reps to speculate. If you have family responsibilities, you're holding a job, that might be the reason why you don't have four, six, seven activities. It's because of, the responsibility. So again, make sure that at some point in the application you're making it very clear to the admissions representative, so again they're not speculating. So we appreciate that, Carly. And of course many students and their parents are concerned about the cost of college. So can you explain UCLA's approach to financial aid and scholarships, and what steps students can take to help ensure that they can afford it?
Yeah, so the University of California is determined to make a UC degree education for California residents affordable and to graduate with as little to no debt as possible. UCLA has been very fortunate. We've had some great opportunities to engage and grow our endowment and specifically earmark dollars to go towards financial aid. The UC as itself has also created some amazing opportunities. There's a Native American Opportunity Grant, there's the Middle Income Grant, there's a Blue and Gold. So a number of these things that may not know too much about, but go to our financial aid site where they're listed. And it really is trying to make it where we are making it for our California residents the most affordable option that they can have and graduating with little to no debt. And we're doing it at a very good high success rate. The other thing you should know is that for California residents, there's what is called the Cal Grant. So not only are you eligible for the Cal Grant, various scholarship resources, but when you're filling out the application, there's a lot of questions that are asked that we don't see it in the application review, but is used to help allocate endowed scholarships for various reasons that you may have shared that might match up to scholarship criteria. So you do see that. Now, how do you apply for it? Is through the application, and then we also take the FAFSA. Now, I'll speak about the FAFSA in a minute. Now, for out of state, this is something I think is also really important. You have to have these conversations early. It is almost double the price to attend UCLA. If you're coming from out of state, you're a non California resident. We have limited funding, limited scholarship to provide for you. So it might be a greater expense, but again, that's where conversations about affordability need to come in play with your family. And what does healthy loans, healthy payments look like for you? Again, the FAFSA is how you apply for financial aid. And we acknowledge at this time of this recording that the FAFSA has gone through some major changes. Our financial aid offices are aware of it across the nation, and we're going to work with families and work with making sure we make a great financial aid package and making it affordable. But I go back to the piece I talked about earlier. Having conversations up front about what does affordability mean to you, because we know it doesn't mean the same to all. Looking at that net price calculator, looking at what that looks like for you if you're a non-California resident versus a California resident. Those are two different ways of looking at affordability. And then the last piece is students, it doesn't stop when you apply, get into, and start college. There are scholarships that are constantly being offered to undergrads. You have to apply to them. They might be within a major, they may be within a certain research field. I talked to one student who said the best advice I can give anyone who's going to college is make applying to scholarship a part time job. Set
Hmm.
time every month, look to see what scholarships there are, apply to them, because every little bit helps along the way. And I think that's really good advice. And I think oftentimes students don't think about that mindset once they get to a college, that there is more money available along the way. Again, just like there is when you're applying to college and applying to scholarships.
Well, I love that advice in terms of making applying to scholarships a part-time job. And I'm sure there's a lot of parents out there that would appreciate it if their students are doing it. But also the fact that, yes, students should have the conversations with their families about affordability often and early so that you don't get accepted to a school only to find out that it's going to be really difficult to afford, or perhaps you can't afford it at all. So we really appreciate that insight. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask a question about transfer students, Carly. Obviously, transfer students also play a significant role in the UC system. So, what unique considerations do transfer applicants face, and how can they best prepare for a successful application?
Yeah, I had not been at an institution that has a large transfer population until I came to UCLA. And it's amazing. It's amazing that not only are freshmen getting to take classes with transfer students, but transfer students' voices are heard and felt. For the UCs, for every 2 freshmen, you must have 1 transfer California resident. So it
Oh,
truly
wow.
is a third of our campus population.
Wow.
For transfers, the preparation and the pathway, we ask for them to have 60 semesters units, which is typically on average they're applying at their second year. So that is something that is a little different than some other places. And the application process, unlike the freshman, is much more focused on major prep.
Hmm.
So you're applying into a major. So, for example, if I'm at Santa Monica Community College and I want to go into psychology, I need to see what are the required courses I need to take at Santa Monica College in order to apply into the major of psychology and be successful with major prep. So that is something that I think is important to understand and look at whether you are coming from a 4-year or 2-year. What are the courses that are required? If you're within the state of California, we have something that's called Assist. It is an online guide that you can put in with the school you're attending, specifically a community college in California, and pull up major prep work that is acceptable at UCLA or any of the UCs. And you're going to get an outline of what that, so an automatic guide. I often say if you're at a 4-year and you're looking to transfer, take a look at what are the prerequisite courses a student must take at UCLA to go into that major. So I'll go back to communications. There's certain classes you must take. And then at the end of your second year at UCLA, you apply into the major. As long as you have those courses taken and approved, that will how you'll funnel into communication. So very similar. I say look at the registrar, the catalog, understand what are those steps to take. I think that is very, very important. The other piece, I think it'd be remiss if I didn't say, a large portion of our students do come from California community colleges. There's a number of resources, like I said, for them. So that is something else that when we're looking for guidance or registering for classes, we work closely with, we visit, we do a lot of work. We have a recruitment transfer team that's out in the field counseling and working with these students.
Well, I'm glad I asked the question. I didn't realize that one third of your students are transfer students. And you mentioned so many different resources, including the Assist program. Again, any links that you want to share, send them to me and we'll put them in the show notes for everyone to check.
Absolutely.
Carly, this has been phenomenal. Before I get to the last question, I have to ask you because it's so important. I know that, with 150,000 some odd students, applying, I want to make sure that I cover everything in this one episode here. So, is there a question that I didn't ask that you wish I had, or perhaps a topic that I didn't bring up that you wish to share with our listeners at this time?
We started off with talking about how stressful applying to college can be.
Hmm,
And one thing that I think can be stressful is feeling that you need to be at every visit or find a way to meet or interview or something that demonstrated interest to show, hey, I'm really interested in your
right,
school.
right.
At UCLA, we don't take demonstrated interest into consideration. It really is just sharing information. If I'm going to your high school, I'm going because I hope I can answer questions you have about the application. I'm not going because I want to see if you're going to show up at my visit. We can't be everywhere. So we have a lot of virtual visits. We hope that that helps. And I think that's something you can take a little bit off of your plate to understand that that's not something we're not doing roll call or checking in. Sometimes it's really because a student has an important question that they're reaching out to us. And that's where it is. We want to be sincere and be able to share that information exchange.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And Carly, like I said earlier, UCLA is so lucky to have you, as were we during this episode. Unfortunately, it does lead us to that last question, which is what are your top 3 pieces of advice that you would provide students and their parents getting ready for the college admissions process?
This first one shouldn't come as a surprise. Discussing affordability and finances. I know that's a hard
Yes.
topic. It's a sensitive topic. We always want to give everything we can, but it's an important topic to have. And setting expectations, because the last thing is getting an admission acceptance and then learning later that you don't have the finances to afford it. So, really being able to have that hard conversation. The next one, this is a marathon, not a sprint. There are no shortcuts. Trust me. And it's not going to be easy. And it's also going to, I hope, will have opportunities for you to pause and celebrate milestones. Celebrate that first application you submit. Celebrate hitting that first wave of deadlines. Celebrate going through this process. Don't wait to celebrate when you get decisions. Celebrate along the way and take your time. And then the last part is to be your genuine self. You are unique. You've had your own unique experiences. And that is to be celebrated as well as sharing that in the application. Don't try to put yourself in what you think we want to know. Just share what you have experienced, and your voice will come through.
Well, those are awesome pieces of advice. I need to repeat them. Discuss the finances and set the expectations early. Celebrate along the way. And students, be your genuine self and you will shine through. And remember, there is a college out there for everyone, but not every
Yes.
college is for every single person. So, Carly, again, I can't thank you enough. This was such an awesome conversation. I'm so glad we met at the NACAT conference so that we could bring this to what I know is going to be a lot of students and their parents listening because UCLA is awesome. Carly, you're awesome. And again, on behalf of everyone listening, thank you so much for your insight today.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure to be here.
Our pleasure. And one last thing to say to all the students and the parents, good luck out there with the college admissions process and best wishes. Take care, all. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the CAP, the College Admissions Process Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please don't forget to tell a friend and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. I am your host, John Durante, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the CAP. I want to welcome back Sean Patel, who's the CEO and founder of Prep Expert. Sean, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, John. Just wanted to do a quick shout out for an amazing deal that we have for college admissions process podcast listeners. We're offering 30% off all Prep Expert SAT and ACT courses and tutoring. It's live online. We've got the best score improvement guarantees in the industry. You'll get taught by 99 percentile instructors. And you can save 30% off when you go to the show notes of the College Admissions Process podcast. Grab your discount code for 30% off and click the link in the show notes.
Thank you, Sean. So great to have you again. And to everyone out there, please note that if you make a purchase through any of our affiliate links, the podcast gets a commission. But rest assured that we would only promote products that we believe in and feel would benefit our listeners. Thank you all and best wishes.